In this video, I'd like to show you how to accomplish a duplicate stitch, which is taking an additional piece of yarn and tracing over the knit stitches in the fabric so that you can achieve a look kind of like intarsia, but without without working multiple yarns at once during your knitting. Before you begin duplicate stitch, it's important to think about the way yarn travels through the fabric in your knitting. When you're knitting, the working yarn travels through your work and it loops up and down. So if you could follow the piece of yarn through your knitting, this is what you would see in a row of knitting. When you're doing duplicate stitch and you're working right to left, that we're going to mirror those stitches and follow the yarn that way. When we're working right to left in left to right, in duplicate stitch, you're going to mirror that up and down wave-like movement in the same way. So if we're working left to right, we will work left to right on the loops, and if we're working right to left, we'll work right to left on the loops. I have my fabric here, and luckily my fabric is white, so it's a little bit easier to see the stitches on. And I'm doing duplicate stitch in black, so you're not always so lucky to be working in such contrasting colors. If we pull the fabric apart a little bit and look back, you can use your eyes and try to follow one row of knitting through the fabric, and you'll see that up and down loop. To begin duplicate stitch, we're looking for these upward facing V's, which are the knit stitches. And wherever you're going to begin, you can insert your needle at the bottom of one of those V's. You have a long piece of yarn, and I'm going to pull it through and leave myself 6 or 8 inches to weave in later. So I have come up at the bottom of this V. I'm going to work right to left right now, so I'm going to follow this V from right to left. And if you see that piece of yarn, it goes up and under the 2 legs of the stitch above it and then back down through that same hole. So I'm going to follow this piece of yarn, pull my black through there, and then I'm going to go down through the same hole. And I'm working right to left right now, so I'm going to come up at the bottom of the V next to the one I just copied. This way I can keep my working yarn on top of the work all the time. Tension is definitely a challenge when you're working duplicate stitch. So you do not want to pull too tight, but you also can't leave it too loose. So mirroring the tension and keeping it even is a challenge. Again, we're working right to left. So I'm going to come up in this V, follow it to the left. And then back down through the same hole. Come up at the base of the V next to it. Now, if I want to move up a row and work left to right after this, as I follow this stitch from right to left, when I go down through the base here to move up a row, I'm going to come up at the base of the V right above it. So it kind of looks like I'm coming up in the middle of it, which I kind of am. And sometimes it takes a little bit of rearranging there. Now, if I want to go left to right on this one, in order to make the stitches not look twisted, I'm going to follow this loop up and go from the left to the right. So I'll insert my needle on the left and bring it back to the right. Follow it back down to the base and come up. Let's see if I can do this more clearly. Come up at the base of the next stitch. You'll find that you probably prefer one direction over the other. So again, come up, follow this stitch from left to right. Don't twist the yarn. Up. And then into the base of that stitch and up at the base of the stitch next to it. Whenever you have finished your duplicate stitch, you'll see I'm always ending on the top of my work here, but if you finish your duplicate stitch, here I can go mirror this last stitch, so I'll have 3 over 3. When you're done, you can insert your needle to the back of your work and pull it through at the base of the last knit stitch you finished.